to bring the case because his son himself should be able to bring the case, and that we haven't proven that a man who is in hiding because there is an authorization for his death doesn't actually have access to the court, can't access the courts himself. In their papers in court, they actually said, it's his choice. He could surrender and access the courts. Why doesn't he just surrender? And the response to that would be, surrender to who and for what? He has not been charged. These are allegations at this point. So that's one of the arguments the government's made. Another is an argument that they have made in virtually every major national security related case since September 11th, which is that these issues relate to foreign policy and national security, and the court has no business interfering in that realm, because that is for the executive. That is a case they made, that is an argument they have made you can count the cases in the Supreme Court since 9/11 in the context of detainees who were challenging their detention in Afghanistan and the US, the Guantanamo cases. They've made that argument in the case of Maher Arar, who is a very well-known, probably the best-known victim of rendition, extraordinary rendition. This is an individual, a citizen of Canada of Syrian origin, who was transiting through JFK, picked up because he was profiled as being a suspect of some kind, put on a plane, sent to Syria, tortured there, held there for a year, completely exonerated after a full investigation by the Canadian government. I got an apology, got money and compensation for what had been done to him, and yet the US government took the position in court that the court had no business even reviewing his case, came forward with an argument about this case being a political question case that the courts shouldn't review, and that decision, and the court agreed, essentially. So in some cases, the argument that they're making about national security issues not being the business of the courts have been rejected, but in some cases they've been accepted. And with this case, the case of Anwar al-Awlaki, it remains to be seen what happens and how the courts will respond. And then the last defense that they've come forward with, which is one that they also make consistently, is that even if the court doesn't accept the first two reasons that they think the case should be kicked out, the case couldn't go forward without disclosing sensitive state secrets, sensitive intelligence that would require disclosure in order for the case to go forward. So that's the last reason they've come forward. But again, there are about 4 sentences in the 60 pages of legal writing that the government has filed with the court that actually talk about their justification, the why they think they have this authority, and their basis for thinking that they can authorize the killing of a U.S. citizen in advance in a country with which the United States is not at war, not engaged in war. So that's a summary of the case. There's a lot of issues we could talk about in relation to it, and I hope we can do that in the second hour. But the last point I would just say is, the litigation has been uphill. It has been really difficult. It will continue to be really difficult. And I think that's why the work of groups like World Can't Wait and the public educating themselves, and journalists writing about these issues is so critical, because it's really public education and public advocacy that will make a difference. We cannot rely on the courts. So I would just encourage all of you, regardless of what you think about the case, what your visceral reactions may be to it because of the particular person at issue, that you at least educate yourself about what the government is claiming, about the authority they're claiming, and just the facts. And the law. You can go to our website. CCR's website is ccrjustice.org. We've got all of the government's filings and a summary of the case on our website. And educate and inform yourselves. And I think we can all agree at the very least that even if you think the government has the power to do this, there should at least be transparency about what's happening. I would encourage you to educate yourselves and write to your Congress people, and at the very least push for greater transparency about this policy. Thank you very much.